Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank Ranking Member Levin for all of his hard work and his unbelievable leadership. He and his staff fight tirelessly for human rights and labor rights in United States trade policy. My amendment is simple, and it is clear. This amendment will add the labor and human rights process that labor activists and struggling workers in the United States and around the world have requested over and over again. As you know, we lost more than 50,000 young men in a tragic war with Vietnam. Many Vietnamese Americans came to this country as refugees, fleeing communism and oppression. They were hoping to achieve the American dream. 2 years ago, dozens of Vietnamese American citizens from my district came to Washington. They asked, they begged, they really begged to do something about what would happen to their friends, family, and loved ones back in Vietnam. I've been to Vietnam. One of our distinguished members on this dais, a member of this committee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Johnson, served in Vietnam. One of my younger brothers was wounded in Vietnam. There's no such thing as freedom to organize. Freedom of speech is limited. The freedom of assembly is limited. We have to do what is right. We have to do something strong, something meaningful to protect labor rights and human rights. If we don't act now at this very moment, then who will act? We have been down this path before. We've heard the same fears and the same warning in China and Colombia and in DR and CAFTA. And in each and every case, American workers said, please do not support race to the bottom. We cannot compete with forced labor, low wages. And what do? It is time to act. Every single time workers in these countries say, please do not support trade without making changes in advance. Time and time again, they warn us that empty promises and plans will do nothing. And their words ring true to this day, and every single week, I receive reports of continued labor and human rights violations occurring in Colombia in the same places that we supported organ that job would bring safety, security, and labor protection. In a few weeks, in a very few short weeks, the world will recognize the anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. A few years ago, I wrote all of my colleagues on this committee to remind them that the question of human rights and trade is not one which began in the 1970s or in the 1990s. In 1807, this very Congress passed the act prohibiting the importation of slaves. Trade and labor, trade and human rights have always been linked. It is not something that is new. It is as old as our country. This is not an issue for another day, another committee. It is time for us to act. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Our trade policies are a reflection of our values. We must respect the dignity and the worth of every human being. What does it profit a great nation to gain a trade bill and lose its soul? As members of this committee, we must be a headlight and not a tail light, or history will not be kind to us. This amendment responds to a desperate call for action. Congress must do something new and learn from the hard, painful lesson of the past FTAs. I urge all of my colleagues to support this amendment. Do what is right, what is fair, and what is just.